Good evening, hello and welcome to this special broadcast. I'm Anusha Soni. A sharp political debate on the linguistic identity has historically created schisms between the north and the south of the country. These fault lines are not new. Even the Constituent Assembly, while framing our constitution, was bitterly divided over this entire issue. India, which is a home to dozens of dialects and languages, a country that prides itself over rich, diverse linguistic and cultural heritage, does not have a national language. We only have official languages. Today is Hindi Divas, a language spoken by over 40% of the country. This also includes various dialects which have a lot of variations as well. This celebration has kick-started political debate as many are opposed to the celebration of Hindi in a state like Karnataka, which has historically resisted any kind of imposition of Hindi, as they say. India, under the 8th schedule of Indian Constitution, has about 22 official languages, no national language, as I said. English continues to be a link language, but the present Union government on various occasions has made a pitch for need of one Indian link language, apart from English. Can India, with its sharp political divisions, ever accept one Indian language as a link language? Is the promotion of Hindi actually happening at the cost of local languages? Do we need to accommodate more? We'll talk about all these issues. First up, a special report.
Official language, link language, thread of national unity, and the mother tongue that has brought India special honour globally. Just some of the tags given to Hindi today. Even as anti-Hindi, pro-Kannada groups in Karnataka protest amid allegations of forced imposition and suppression of local languages, giving Hindi Divas a big political dimension. With some pot shots against the language and its users, turning the flashpoint ugly.
India is already united. Now they are going to dismantle India. All the people who are selling Pani Puri, they are North Indians. Pani Puri and Pan Beda, it is their culture. You see, we are Karnataka people, self-pride people. We are here, we are earning, we are learning.
Celebrating Hindi Divas is nothing wrong. We should celebrate. We should encourage the usage of many more languages. That is the way forward. And at the same time, we should not compromise when it comes to our language.
हम सब ने पूरे देशवासियों ने संकल्प लेने की जरूरत है.
In his address at the All India Official Language Conference to celebrate Hindi Divas, Home Minister Amit Shah focused on the importance of both Hindi and local languages in nation building and a new India.
और हमारी हिंदी ये हमारे सांस्कृतिक धारा प्रवाह का प्राण है. हमारी संस्कृति को, हमारे इतिहास को और आने अनेक पीढ़ियों से हमारा जो साहित्य सर्जन हुआ है, इसकी आत्मा को अगर समझना है तो राजभाषा को सीखना ही पड़ेगा.
Opposition to what's been termed Hindi imposition in non-Hindi speaking states dates back to the 1930s, with leaders over the years lashing out on alleged language chauvinism and Hindi hegemony. In Karnataka, the issue has assumed political proportions more over the last 5 years. Hindi versus non-Hindi, North versus South, and the like. Chief Minister Bommai today assured a Kannada language law soon.
ಇವತ್ತು ಕನ್ನಡ ಬಳಕೆ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಮಾಡೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಒಂದು ಕಾನೂನನ್ನೇ ತರ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀವಿ ನಾವು. ಇದೇ ಸೆಷನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ವಿಧಾನಸಭೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಕನ್ನಡವನ್ನ ಕಾನೂನಾತ್ಮಕವಾಗಿ ಕಡ್ಡಾಯ ಮಾಡುವಂತದ್ದು ಪ್ರಥಮ ಬಾರಿ ಈ ರಾಜ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ತರ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇವೆ.
In the present political climate, Hindi Divas turns into a polarization tool. Appreciating the brilliance of the language and its masters turns almost secondary.
But if you're thinking this entire political controversy is anything new, it's not. In fact, it predates our independence, it predates our Indian Constitution, and you can go back in time and trace how this has been a divisive issue between the north and the south of the country. We're going to zoom out a little bit, not just in the state of Karnataka. Multiple states have had a problem. Between 1937 to 40, in Madras Presidency, there were anti-Hindi protests led by Periyar, the great revolutionary. 2 people had lost their lives. In Andhra Pradesh, 1952, you had outrage over plan to make Osmania University University, a Hindi medium institution, Hindi as a language of instruction. In Tamil Nadu, 1963, there were DMK protests over wording of Official Language Act, and then you had then Prime Minister who had to intervene into the matter. July 25th, 1964, in Tamil Nadu, yet again, there was an unfortunate immolation by DMK's Chinnaswamy, and this was once again over the issue of language. 1965, there were riots over centres pushed to make Hindi the sole official language in the state of Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh. We have seen this. In Tamil Nadu, once again, riots over Rajiv Gandhi's Navodaya school plans. And Navodaya schools had Hindi as a mandatory language, and that was a problem. 2017, come to the recent time. Not to forget, there was uproar over the use of the Hindi signages that had come up in multiple places. And the question was, why should you have it? There are not many people who speak Hindi here. Campaign against Hindi signboards in the Namma Metro. Once again in Karnataka in 2017, there was a problem. Who can forget the draft national education policy in 2019, where it was a 3-language formula that was being talked about. It was resisted by most of the southern parties. And then you had the central government coming forward and saying, look, we're not looking for imposition. We only want a certain kind of an Indian link language to this entire thing. From the time of 2019 to 2022, once again, there's anger over proposal to make Hindi compulsory up to class 10 in Northeast. So the diversity of the country, which has always been our strength, often creates these deep polarizations, and not new. Matter of pride or parochialism. What exactly is this debate about? I open this debate to a panel of guests as well who are joining us on the broadcast. We have Mr. Mohan Vishwa, who is the spokesperson of the Karnataka BJP. We also have Bhavya Narasimhan Murthy, who is the spokesperson of Karnataka Congress. Prerna Malhotra, who is an author and political commentator, is also joining us. Professor Chandan Gowda from the R.K. Hegde Chair, Professor of IICC Institute of Social and Economic Change, is also with us, and Mr. Abdul Raza Khan, who is a political analyst, is also with us on the broadcast. Coming to you, Mohan Vishwaji, my first question to you. Is it possible that in today's day and age, after 75 years of Indian independence, and I was reading the Constituent Assembly debates today, not much has changed. I mean, we continue to be deeply divided over the linguistic issue, and to have one Indian language as a link language still invokes a lot of passions.
See, Anusha, even like it can be pre-independence or post-independence. So we are of multiple, language country, as you also know, and the most of the states have been divided based on the language itself. But regarding, having a one language across the country, there was discussion going on probably pre-independence and post-independence, like as you said. But when we came to power, so our stand is very clear. We are the one who are promoting, more and more regional languages. It can be NEP for that matter. If you take new education policy, the first 5 years of curriculum of a child, so we are the one who made mandatory to be communicated or to be told in the schools in a regional language. And also the graduation level also, we made the regional languages compulsory. Post that court gave an order, you should not make it as a compulsory. So these are the stands we have taken. And also, see, who are the problem creators? It's none other than, again, Congress and JDS. If you look at the history, Jawaharlal Nehru was the first person to celebrate Hindi Divas when the Constitutional Assembly, accepted Hindi as an official language in the year 1949. Post that, he was ruling for several decades. So then Congress never had a problem with the center and the state. Then Indira Gandhi was in power. She continued her celebration. Then also they never had a problem with the center and the state. And post that, even Rajiv Gandhi never had an issue. And Mr. Siddaramaiah, who ruled between 2013 and 2018, he never had an issue. Come on, Mr. Manmohan Singh in the year 2006.
So Mohanji, your argument is that within the BJP, and there's a very clear pitch that has come from the Prime Minister and Home Minister, not the first time. They have repeatedly said that, even Gujarati is their mother tongue, but they have said that across the country we need one language, one Indian language, which is a link language. But within the state unit of the BJP, is there a consensus that that's the line? Are there no internal divisions, Mohanji?
See, for us, the regional language is first, okay? The first priority is Kannada always. But what our national leaders have told is, it should be used as an alternative for English. That's what he meant. He never said that it should be made as a compulsory or you should make, impose Hindi on somebody.
No, but is your electorate or the political class or the state actually ready to actually substitute Hindi with the usage of English? Because I've heard a lot of people through the day speaking about this issue, and the sentiment is that this is almost like a foreign language to us. I mean, we are speaking in English, we can continue to speak in English. Why should we learn Hindi? That's what you often hear.
see, that's what Anusha I said. It's not mandatory. He said it can be an alternative. See, discussions have started. It's not that, he never said that it should be used,
Okay.
Against English, or it should be
Let me bring in the Congress party into the
curriculum
discussion.
or
Let me bring in the
whatever
Congress
it may
party
be.
into the discussion. And Mohanji, the points that you've raised, Bhavya, why is it that we continue to use this word imposition? I don't think that any language should suffer at the cost of another, especially rich language like a Kannada or a classical language like Tamil. But at the same time, as has been said many times, we need to shed the colonial hangover. And there's a need for a linked language across the country. Can Hindi be that language? What's the stand of your party? Because your party has criticized the celebration of Hindi Divas.
We already have English as our link language. We do not understand why. Hindi Divas, yes, it was introduced by the Congress, but it was not imposed on every state to celebrate it. In every government officers with billboards, with Hindi boards outside their officers, and spend crores of rupees on that. Just like how we have Kannada Rajyotsava, Hindi Divas was another day. If you want Hindi Divas to be celebrated across India, why not Kannada be celebrated across India? Why is Kannada Rajyotsava only specifically celebrated in Karnataka? How is Kannada any less than Hindi?
No, I think at the outset of this debate, I want to highlight that this kind of a language that, how is Kannada any less than Hindi? I don't think those are the binaries in which we are really talking. We're talking, I think, from a larger policy point of view, Bhavya, that if Hindi is being used, and I'm talking about different dialects, say Maithili or a different kind of dialects which are spoken in Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, if Hindi is the broad language which is roughly spoken by 30 to 40% of the population, there is a good chance that because of its flexibility, it can be used as a linked language. And we can have that debate and discussion in this country without really running down one language over another.
Exactly. Why Hindi is our question? Is it a majority versus minority? Is it because it's just convenient to the majority of population that the other, section needs to learn that? Is it not called imposition?
So, what majority versus minority are we talking about? I didn't understand these binaries at all. What kind of majority and minorities are we talking about here?
You're saying 40% of UP, Bihar people speak Hindi.
UP, Bihar, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, parts of Gujarat, many other parts of the country.
Speak Hindi.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean the other section, the minorities which do not speak Hindi, but they have their own rich languages, need to learn Hindi. This is the definition of imposition, right?
So how does one distinguish imposition from a cultural exchange? How does that work? Like, what's the distinction that the Congress party really draws?
Can you please repeat the question?
I'm saying that when you say a language is being imposed, right, you ought to have some substantial reasons to say that. Just because Hindi Divas is being celebrated, I think it's too far-fetched to say Hindi is being imposed.
Just before this dialogue, our debate, I heard many people talking about, I heard the report where you said, billboards in Hindi were displayed in metros and other places where Kannada people we protested and it was taken down. Even today we see in lot of government programs, when central government programs where BJP leaders from center come here for the programs, we see only billboards in Hindi in Karnataka. The current BJP government is trying to impose this on the Kannada people. But if you see in Tamil Nadu or Kerala, any central government program, they have their boards in their own language.
Okay. I want to bring in the JDS speaker Abdul Raza Khan also into the discussion. Mr. Khan, there's a very objectionable statement that came from one of your key party leaders today, who said that people from the Hindi-speaking states, from UP, Bihar, they sell pani puri and pan bida. I mean, that was very condescending, in bad taste, and should have not been said. Abdul Raza Khan.
Anusha, as a child, I grew up listening to this beautiful phrase written by Pandit Vinay Chandra Maudgalya ji. It says, Hind desh ke nivasi sabhi jan ek hain, rang roop vesh bhasha chahe anek hain. Our country is a mix of all types of cultures, communities, languages, You know, we were 567 different princely states with various, diversities. We may be different by caste, creed, religion, race, language, but we are all one as Indians.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to Kannada, absolutely no compromise. There is absolutely no compromise. It is my mother tongue. It is my mother language. In every store, stall, mall, wherever you go, we want to see Kannada on the top. There is absolutely no compromise when it comes to Kannada.
Okay.
Now, by imposing, Hindi on us, the central government is trying to do injustice by forcing a single language. If they really want to unite India, they would not get into this kind of political propaganda.
You spoke in a very inclusive tone, and when you quoted that Hindi author, I'm not going to use Hindi in today's discussion, but what I want to ask you is that if this is the inclusive tone, and I agree with you, Kannada is your mother tongue, it should be most important to you, and your mother tongue should be most important to you. That being said, why would you speak condescendingly of people who come from UP, Bihar and look for jobs in a state like Karnataka? The IT capital of the country is in the state of Karnataka. People come for jobs from across the world. That doesn't mean you show them down in this manner. You call them, you speak about them. I mean, CM Ibrahim, the way he spoke, do you really support that?
See, by imposing this language, they want to do election propaganda saying that we are trying to unite the country.
Abdulji, you have not answered my question. I'm asking you a different question.
Dividing.
Abdulji, I'm asking you a different question. I have agreed with you on all the points. You have not answered my question.
Please come again with the question.
My question is, CM Ibrahim spoke about people from Hindi-speaking states coming and selling Pani Puri and Pan Bida. And he spoke in a condescending tone. Do you support that?
That is what we are saying, injustice. Now, my previous spokesperson was also speaking the same thing. She was from Congress. She was speaking the same thing. This is something between majority and minority. Majority of the people might be speaking Hindi. They want to impose this on the minorities. Why? We are a union of different kinds of communities and cultures. Accept that. Why are you doing election propaganda by imposing, by forcing? We will definitely not allow this day to happen. This is not Hindi Divas. This will definitely not happen in Karnataka. We have many institutions here who not only read, write, talk Kannada, but we breathe Kannada. I am telling this on national television that we not only read, write and speak Kannada, but we breathe Kannada.
You didn't answer my question.
Absolutely no compromise when it comes to our mother tongue and mother language.
And you should not. As I said earlier, you should not. You should take pride. It's a language of great poets. It's a language of great heritage. It's a language which is a repository of our thousands of years of heritage. Why should you compromise on it? But why would you run down people who come in search of livelihoods to different parts of the country, including the state of Karnataka? I'm going to go to Professor Chandan Gaura.
They're definitely coming. They're working here. They have no problems, absolutely.
No, you're right. They have no problems. But a political leader should not be speaking in this tone and tenor, right? I mean, you can have a problem with the central government and the imposition policy.
But a political leader should not be doing politics on language, right?
But for that, you can't really bash.
Political leaders should not be doing politics on language, right?
I'm going to move on.
They should not be forcing on us, right?
I'm going to move on to Professor Chandan Gaura, who's with us on the broadcast. Prerna Malhotra is also with us. Professor Gaura, first to you. You've heard the political class speaking. In my understanding, in my limited understanding, there is still no apolitical space to have a discussion in this country, a national discussion in this country, that should we actually have an Indian language as a link language, because the imposition word, that continues to dominate the discourse. Professor Gaura.
Thank you. You mentioned earlier that we should overcome colonial habits of thought. The idea that a country has to have one language and one religion is a European idea.
Yes.
We all know that. So we need to shed that way of thinking about the nation and reimagine it. So what this amounts to essentially is to get rid of any attempt at internal colonialism. When you have Hindi Divas and not Divases for other languages, you're symbolically privileging, elevating a language as first among equals, if you will. And for whatever reason, it's been done for the last few decades. And now the questioning of the continuation of the practice has become very loud. And democracies indeed change. They evolve. That's the very nature of democracy. Laws are amended, as you know. So there's nothing wrong in taking stock of the situation and wondering, maybe there's something unwise about this practice.
Okay, Mr. Gaura, Professor Gaura, allow me an interjection. Allow me an interjection here. Isn't your argument circular in nature? And I'll substantiate how. First, we talk about putting down the colonial hangover in terms of the language. I mean, it's an oxymoron that you and I are talking in English right now. But if we have to, if we have to shed this colonial hangover, it's about substituting those things with more Indian symbols and Indian languages. If there's one language that needs to be used, you know, apart from the other 22 languages under the 8th schedule of the Indian Constitution as the official language, dominant part of it, it has to be an Indian language. And Hindi happens to be spoken in different dialects in different ways in a majority part of the country. So, quite rationally speaking, isn't that a good option?
Here again, the idea that, you know, even, you know, you're very posing of the problem. I mean, many Hindi speakers in Bihar, let's say Maithili speakers or speakers will say that it's not Hindi but something else. And they're all clubbed under this figure of 46%.
That's right.
But be that as it may, you're right, you know, Hindi films, you know, and Hindi, you know, television, etc., has made Hindi a lot more familiar across the country. But let that happen informally. The state, as an official agent, ought not to explicitly push for this unification of language practices. And that, I think, is a terrible way of, you know, imagining a democracy, which is why you find every year the Home Minister saying the same thing: Hindi unifies the nation, and the pushback from across non-Hindi speaking areas. And we can't continue to see this happen and pretend that there isn't an issue here. I feel it's time to rethink and reimagine the way ahead in very different ways. We have Hindi as the administrative language of the central government, fine. But this Hindi Divas is not just about that. It's about making sure it's promoted in all kinds of other arenas. And that's what I think needs to be rethought. And really, I think it's an open future. There are many innovative
Professor Gaura, I disagree with the reimagination part of it. And I'll tell you why I disagree with the reimagination part of it. Because I think in the modern nation state and in a constitutional democratic setup, for a country like India, to have 22 official languages and not have a national language is already an outlier in many ways possible. I don't think that India as a country has imported that Eurocentric idea of having one religion, one language identity. We continue to be very diverse, and our diversity sometimes is the problem. I'll bring in Prerna Malhotra also into the discussion.
Very quickly,
yes.
The question is, are we a nation state or a state nation? Some have tried to say India got a state and then put together the nation in our own way. Many languages, many states, a federal polity, all of that. So nation state is European, state nation is Indian.
Interesting.
And we need to make use of this advantage, this design advantage.
Federalism, the dominant theme of Indian Constitution. Prerna Malhotra, you want to come into the discussion, and I wanted to talk about the politics that we see around this issue. I mean, in a utopian world, ideally you'd expect politicians to push dialogues and try to bridge these issues. 75 years of our independence. In the Constituent Assembly, it was thought that maybe after 15 years, we'd be able to have some kind of consensus of having a national language in this country or have a national languages in this country. If you read through the Constituent Assembly debates, that has not happened. And the politics of today is not really helping it.
Yes, this debate is not new, nor the controversy regarding the language, the linguistic divide between the South and the North. We have to see that why this debate has happened on the Hindi Divas, which has been celebrated since 1949, including Karnataka, including by the Congress government. You know, it was also mentioned by some speaker. So, this controversy regarding having one national language, it should have been dealt with this stern hand in 1947 itself. It's too late. Why shouldn't we have a national language? And that language which is spoken by 43% of people, that deserves to be the national language, not any other language which is spoken by 3% or 4% or less than that of people. So, I mean, Hindi deserves to have that status. And we must understand.
But Prerna ji, the argument is also, and I don't think that's a completely wrong argument. There's some substance to it, that with the language comes your identity, your culture, and your unique habits.
This is majority versus minority.
I'm going to come to you. Abdulji, I'll come to you. I'll come to you. I'll give you the opportunity to respond. But Prerna ji, the argument here is also that along with this language also comes a cultural imposition. And the southern states in this country have had a very unique identity, merged yet still very separate, unique and distinct.
See, this country has that diverse culture and it has been there for thousands of years.
Yeah.
No, I mean, if we declare one language as national language, that cannot snatch away the diversity of the country.
Okay, I'm going to take that point in the last 5 minutes to the,
in spite of the diversity,
to the political guest as well, Bhavya, why shouldn't Hindi be the national language if the different dialects or forms of it are spoken by over 40% of the population? The other languages across the country, including the southern languages, have a very limited population that uses this language. Bhavya.
So basically you're saying so majority wins and the feelings of minority don't matter.
But why are we creating these binaries? Why are we creating these binaries? Why is it one versus the other? And why aren't we thinking as a nation? I outrightly reject these binaries of majority versus minority.
The other 60% to adjust and learn a new language.
Okay.
Although they already have their own mother tongue. Just to facilitate and because it is convenient to the 40% of people.
But how about a model which the union government has also been talking, that the mother tongues and the local languages, the regional languages continue to be the language of prominence, but along with that you should have a second or a third language as well. That's the idea we are talking about. We're not talking about replacing Kannada with Hindi. That's not the idea we're discussing, just to be clear here.
What I'm saying is, why not choose, my question is, I'm not suggesting choose another language.
Yeah.
How about asking those 40% people or the rest of the, people to learn Kannada instead? Why Hindi?
Because I think the answer was very simple, as I said, speaks more than 40% of people speak it.
To the 40% of the people, you want the other people to learn that as either the second language or
Abdul Raza Khan, and this is my question to you, that why are we polarizing or dividing this issue in the binaries of majority versus minority? Why can't we have this discussion as a nation of people who agree to disagree, perhaps? Why create these binaries which only divide the country between the north and the south? Abdul Saab.
Anusha, listen, we are not creating any binaries, we are not against the unification of the country if it really happens. But all these phrases, these glittering kind of words coming out of these BJP leaders are only idioms and it could just be, jumlas. The reason why I'm saying this is what happened to their earlier phrases like Ek Desh, Ek Pradhan, Ek Nishan. Come on, we guys could never settle to one national flag. These were the people who objected. Even today, their own BJP leader says he wants to raise a saffron flag on Red Fort. Was it any other party speaking? It was the BJP speaking.
Okay.
So these people cannot unite on the national flag. They want to impose India on us to unite India.
Okay, it's only fair that I give BJP the opportunity to respond. Mohan Vishwa, a lot of questions have been raised, but largely all the efforts of the centre are being seen as imposition. Your political opponents are united in that, and they're saying, we also had Professor Chandan Gaura who said there is a need to rethink. Perhaps it's not possible in this country. Mohan Vishwa.
See, Anusha, from past 20-25 minutes, they are not answered not even a single question raised by you. They are just changing the goalpost and they are using the word only imposition. Let me tell you, when they were in power at the center and the state, they will never have an issue when the same Congress started, Hindi Divas. And please remember, Mr. Mahatma Gandhi was heading Hindi Prasara Sabha in Chennai. Okay, and the same Mahatma Gandhi has been, the Congress has been hijacked his name and they're doing politics in his name. And also, as far as JDS is concerned, even now he has not answered the question about, the Mr. CM Ibrahim using some filthy words against, UP Panipuri Walas. So these guys are coming here and making some sort of controversy, and Mr. JDS spokesperson Abdul Razak, who speaks about uniting India, his own leader, Mr. H.D. Kumarasamy, goes and joins hands with Mr. Stalin, DMK, where he is asking for a separate Dravidian state. So what kind of statement he is making? He is the one.
All right, Mr. Khan, let me finish it. Let him finish. He did not interrupt. Let him finish.
You have not answered. You are only changing your goalposts. You don't have any question. And your own party Prime Minister, Mr. H.D. Devegowda, in which language is his speech? In Red Fort, when he was the Prime Minister, he openly said he's going to learn Hindi in 4 months.
Mr. Khan, Mr. Abdul Raza Khan, please let the BJP spokesperson finish. I gave you the opportunity to talk.
You have clearly exposed in this debate that, you guys are double standards.
I'm going to cut it there. I'm short of time. Mr. Mohan Vishwa, Bhavya, Prerna Malhotra, Professor Chandan Gowda and Abdul Raza Khan. Thank you everyone for joining us on the broadcast. I don't think there's a conclusion to this debate, but perhaps the only hope is that this kind of debate in this country from a policy point of view should happen in a perhaps more non-polarized, non-political atmosphere. With that utopian idea, it's a wrap from my side. Shivani takes it forward.